Hello.
Welcome to the Spinecrackers fucking official glow up episode.
That's right. Yeah, we got somebody here with a quite a bit of tech and hardware.
I went all out.
Disposal.
I got all the stuff. New computer, new HD webcam, new sick mic with an arm.
I don't know if you can tell if Paul sounds like a completely different human being because of how high fucking fidelity his voice is at this point.
Now you're gonna get the full spectrum, the real me.
The real me. I don't know if they can handle. I don't know if they can handle the real you, Paul.
I don't think they can either.
I already forgot what the real world intro is, where people stop being what and start getting real.
Stop being polite and start getting real.
Yeah, that's Paul.
Yeah.
I'm more like the road rules, actually.
He's so much more real by like fakely amplifying his voice with
that's right.
A technological fucking.
Well, the Real World Road Rules Challenge was hosted at some point by Joe Rogan, who's set up.
No, is that true?
Am I just making that up?
I think you might be making that up.
I think you're thinking of
Fear Factor.
Fear Factor.
Well, I mean, obviously,
no,
I know. But did he really host that?
I don't know if that's true, but I know he was hosting other random stuff.
Is this the Mandela effect happening right now? Like you have a clear
possibly.
Yeah, because I kind of do too. It seems like it's plausible.
Some like hot people competing in not like eating a horse's dick raw, like like they were
spiders.
It was like something else, but maybe I'm conflating it.
Well, a lot of those. I don't know if you are. I'm still trying to look it up, but if you are, it is probably because a lot of those road rules. Real world challenges, which by the way, I fucking love that show. I watched that show religiously.
It's a good
for
show.
Years.
Yeah.
But a lot of those challenges were fucking like Fear Factor-esque challenges like you're saying.
I was always into the ones where it was like the ones I remember most distinctly were like genuinely dangerous seeming, where like it usually involved something like suspended in midair, like high in the air.
Yeah.
Like, and it was like, okay, you have to make it through this greased trellis hanging 1,000 feet above the air by these cranes. And you've got like, harnesses with like bungee cords on them and stuff, but like, yeah.
Not that safe, not that thought out.
The teammates would be screaming like encouragement, like way down below, like, you got it, Carly. Like, just like, I just remember all this stuff so distinctly.
Shout outs to The Miz, who fucking parlayed that shit into an actual professional wrestling career.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Look him up, The Miz. Mike, I don't forget his actual last name. But he started out on fucking the challenge, dude. And he's in the fucking whatever it's called now, WWE.
Wow. Good
yeah, I wish I was more plugged into that, but
I don't that's not you don't really probably wish you were.
No. All right. Yeah, probably right.
But it's funny. I mean, by the end of that show, they just were like at the beginning, it was those like elaborate, complicated, semi-dangerous challenges that were, but by the end, they were just literally just like, all right, fucking wrestle each other. Like, see who wins.
Fight each other.
Producers just ran out of ideas.
Yeah.
The night before, they're just drunk. Like, oh, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Let's just have a fight.
What if you're fighting in a bubble, but we just let bees in there? And it was just like, that's a show, it is a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to Spinecrackers.
Okay. And if you might have probably guessed it already, but today we're talking about Michel Houellebecq.
Shit.
Per tradition, Paul, why don't you tell us what we're reading and why you chose it?
Wait, one last housekeeping thing I want to say. This is our 20th episode, boys. 20th
Wow.
episode.
Happy
20
20.
bucks.
Wow. Happy 20 years together.
It's the fucking glow up. Paul's got the system. Happy 20 years married happily. And
Paul, it's no joke. Paul's the only one. Paul's got the mic arm. He's got
Dude.
the thing with the arm that
I
puts
wanted
it
the
right at
arm.
your face.
I feel like such
Yeah.
a little like the bitch. Like you can't even see my
Yeah.
mic.
I know it's like you don't even have one, but mine's
I'm just
so
gonna
in your
hold it like
face.
this the whole time.
Yeah. Unduly cradle it.
I do have one.
You know, my thought was if I'm gonna get a microphone, why not look fucking sweet and cool and like I'm a professional? So,
It does. I mean, and it does. And
Speaking
you
of
done
being
it.
a professional, we have a Patreon now.
yeah,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And it's
professional.
fucking patreon.com/spinecrackers. And if you go there's fun shit you can purchase from us, exchange your legal tender for goods and services.
Mm-hmm. And if you
yeah.
give us, there's a bunch of different tiers, and if you, the highest tier is 1,000, that you can go on a date with me, I'll kiss you.
Guaranteed first base, Paul.
That's
Yes, first base.
just straight up advertising prostitution on the podcast.
It's Patreon. I mean, it's a sort of it's a fledgling notion, but
If you know the password,
bit.
it's if
Yeah.
you know the password, you can sign up for that tier.
yeah.
But yeah, go check it out. Go check it out. And yeah, 20th episode. We're fucking on the way up.
Yeah.
Next
Stonks.
episode 21, just going up.
This fucking stonks number go up like linear. Looks good. The graph is going up.
Yes.
It looks like a wedge, and that's good.
So yeah, this book is called Submission. I picked it. It was kind of an off-the-shelf pick for me, honestly. So I didn't know much about Houellebecq. I just kind of read about him a little bit before I added it to the list, and I really had no expectations. I knew that he was like a big French author, like one of the most famous living French authors, right?
Oh,
would
what a big
say-
man you are.
He's a big
I would
man.
say so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think this is his latest book, right?
I can't name it. Can
2015.
you? No, he's got two
Serotonin.
since then, or just one.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well,
Just
it's
the one.
published in 2015. I want to do something different this time, and I actually just want to read the back
Do it.
and read
Sure.
the little snippet reviews, because it might be a good starting point for the discussion. Okay. It's 2022. Francoise is the main character. Francoise is bored. He's a middle-aged lecturer at the new Sorbonne University and an expert on J.K. Rowling or Huysmans. Sorry,
He's small.
Huysmans. The famed 19th century novelist associated with the decadent movement. But Francois' own decadence is of considerably smaller scale. He sleeps with his students, eats microwave dinners, and watches porn. Meanwhile, it's election season, and in all alliance with the socialists, France's new Islamic party sweeps to power, and Islamic law is instituted. Women are reviled, polygamy is encouraged, and Francois is offered an irresistible academic advancement on the condition that he converts to Islam, which is interesting to me because that happens like basically at the very end of the book. It's a weird description.
And it might not even happen. We can talk about it. It's written in the conditional.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where the description totally does not seem correct to me. A darkly comic masterpiece from one of France's great writers, Submission has become an international sensation and one of the most discussed novels of our time. And I just want to read a couple of these snippet reviews. This one's by the New York Review of Books. A classic novel of European cultural pessimism that belongs in whatever category you put books like Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain and Robert Musil's The Man Without Qualities.
Holy shit. Holy
Yeah.
shit.
Insane review. Whoever wrote that.
Yeah. This is by Adam Gopnik at the New Yorker. Houellebecq is a sincere satirist, genuinely saddened by the absurdities of history and the madness of mankind. Again, I did not find this book satirical at all, but I'll read one more. This is by the San Francisco Chronicle. A challenging satire that, at its best, is subtler than its author's reputation might lead you to expect. So, I mean, that's pretty much a weird description, I would say. The back of the book is kind of a strange description.
It gets it hits the main points, right? It's a sad boy. It's a sad boy, depressed, middle-aged dude who's teaching in a literature department, and the Muslim party wins in France, and he goes through a sort of like false religious awakening, and then a sort of one of convenience, kind of, while kind of fucking his way through.
Yeah, there's not really a lot of plot points, really. I mean,
I agree. It's kind of a simple plot ultimately, but
yeah,
Matt,
but there's a lot.
Yes.
I mean, the back kind of describes it almost too much. It's like one of those trailers for a movie where it's like, okay, well, you just showed me a super cut of the entire thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You picked this semi-randomly. I don't know, Paul. I don't know if you had any like even sort of like slight notion of like Houellebecq's notoriety.
No, I picked it. It was an off-the-shelf Kindle pick. I mean, I didn't buy it on Kindle, but I found it on my Kindle. It was just like, oh, okay, this is the right page amount, and it seems like it could be a interesting read. I thought it was actually going to be a lot more satirical in the way that like French cartoons are. I thought it was going to be like cartoony and funny. Like,
well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the the context around this book is like half of its thing, right?
Yes.
Houellebecq is known. Michel Houellebecq is known for being kind of like this edgy bad boy, doesn't give a fuck, and is like a dick in interviews and blah 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 blah. This book specifically, which is about an Islamic takeover of French politics, was, I may be wrong with this. I know for sure he was on the cover of Charlie Hebdo the day that the shooting took place there, and I believe this book was also published that same day. Is that right, or was that just in the same vicinity?
I feel like it was the same vicinity.
Okay. But he was on the cover that day, the day that issue was coming out. He was on the cover.
Yes, his face.
And so, of course, this book was that just kind of fucking blew this book up, right? Because it was about Islamic extremism, sort of. I mean, it's not really about Islamic extremism, I would say. It's about Islam in general, sort of, and also not. We'll talk about all that. But
right,
it coming out on the same day as that shooting kind of made it like immediately relevant in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, which it's funny to be taken back to that time. I do remember, like, because that's 2015, and like, I don't know if you guys remember, but often in the US you don't get these kind of things breaching into our consciousnesses through the media, but like this was something that I don't know, we took up, and I remember all these discussions about Charlie Hebdo and like kind of discussions about Charlie. Exactly, hashtag, and like kind of these weird discussions, about like, did they deserve it? And like really kind of somewhat interesting, but mostly fucked up conversations, like, I don't know about like the rightness or wrongness of that event. But yeah, I think Submission just like Houellebecq was well known before that. I don't know what novel this would be in his kind of like oeuvre, but like he's established. He's been established. Like he's already a thing in France. Like people know him. He's already kind of like got the rep. And then he gets this, which I think one of the big problems I have with it, and I think you guys agree, is like before this, I think it was Platform and then some sort of like bombing that happened, but the idea that he's some sort of prognosticator.
I think it was just 9/11, right? I think it was Platform sort of coincided with 9/11, and there's I haven't read it, but I believe that was because there's some big terrorist attack in Platform.
the London tube station.
It could have been that. I'm not sure. It was one of those big. Well, when did Platform come out? Hold on. We're professional researchers.
Yeah, but like I all I'm saying is that I agree with you that like I think a huge part of the book
2001. So yeah, same year as 9/11.
Okay. the huge part of the book, I think, breaching American audiences was like this synergy with a tragedy around Islamic extremism, and then just this kind of including an Islamic takeover. But like Gabe said, it's not really about like terrorism at all.
No.
But yeah, just like kind of riding a wave.
Yeah,
in
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that,
international consciousness.
right. And I think that that's exactly the right way to put it, Matt, because this book is sort of the crest or the high watermark of the whole kind of like political cartoons depicting Muhammad and death threats about that kind of shit. And then, the Charlie Hebdo thing happens for the same reason, I believe, right? It's because they published cartoons depicting Muhammad.
Yes, yeah.
And that wasn't the first one. There was some in like Sweden or Norway or something, right? Some cartoonist who was doing that kind of work. And then this book, that sort of, it, like you said, it's such a sort of surreal experience to be brought back to that time because it feels so foreign and alien from what's going on now. And I think like I'll just say, I mean, putting some of my cards on the table here, I think that one of the things that I've always kind of disliked about Houellebecq and the sort of I don't want to say cult, but his fan base is that they paint him as this like prophet that, Platform happened to come out the same year as 9/11. This book came out around the same time as the Charlie Hebdo shootings. And if he's a prophet, and serotonin with the yellow vest thing came out with the yellow vest, which is about a sort of populist farmer uprising. I haven't read it, but I know the big points. But again, if and I don't know the degree. Maybe that's something we talk about to which Houellebecq has his pulse on French society. I certainly don't. He probably does more than I do. But as a sort of prophecy, this book is clearly ridiculous, and it's not. we're the reality we're living in now is so removed from any of those concerns. When was the last time you heard someone talking about drawing cartoons about Muhammad? It was probably around when this fucking book came out.
Yeah,
right. It's just not a thing anymore. And this book takes place in 2022, so
right
next year. And it's sort of a Houellebecq writing about the future is just it feels basically just like him extrapolating immediate things. It's not really a prediction. It's just sort of here's what's happening now, and I'm assuming it's going to keep happening, and maybe here's what that would look like. Which, okay, but to call it like prophetic or especially in touch seems ridiculous to me.
I mean, like you said, we're not French. We don't really know a lot.
No, sir.
I
hell
don't
no,
know
dude.
much about French cult, like
fucking freedom fries, dude. Freedom fries are best.
These frogs can go eat it.
I think the one thing that Houellebecq may have gotten right, like in terms of the pulse on maybe French men of a certain age, like I think he does know a lot about how men think in his culture, and it's like I think that the main character Francois is kind of like a strange everyman in a sense, and it's kind of depressing. Like I think he did potentially hit that nail on the head, and I think that's probably like the strongest aspect of the book to me is the characterization of that just kind of like lonely, depressed, like sex chasing guy who doesn't have like any direction or any real thoughts or any like pressing issue to try to better himself or anything. He's like a wasteland type man, and I think that was a good aspect of the book for me, but one of the only good aspects, I would say. Do you agree with that, or what do you?
I don't know. I like. I know, like I'd heard this elsewhere, but like the idea of Francois, the main character, being called that because it's a stand-in for like France, and it's like this would be the sort of Francois would be, I guess an everyman in the sense that like he's supposed to be this agglomeration of various like tendencies and nihilism in like the average French citizen. But this is one of the problems that I have. Like it's more what you're describing is more like why Houellebecq, and I, full disclosure, like I've read 5 Houellebecq books. 5.
This is breaking news. Breaking news revealed on the pod by Matt.
And we all know why, because I've been called slanderous things over the course of these episodes.
Is anyone shocked? Is anyone shocked?
But this shit is pretty par for the course. Like, this kind of dissolute, man, depressed,
sad boy.
Yeah, exactly right. As representative of anything, it's the most tiresome aspect of Houellebecq's like writing. It's like a tick. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, and it bespeaks the fans that he ends up getting, which are
sad
people
boys.
that, right. Gabe, you sent us that great like sort of Updike review of The Possibility of an Island, which is my favorite one of his, but for reasons that are different. But like, just the idea of this, like, he's got more of a depressed person's view, which is incredibly blinkering and limiting and hermetically sealed in despair. And like, those are your horizons. And it just becomes more suffocating like with every successive book, I feel like. So yeah.
I mean, go ahead, Paul.
I was just gonna say, like, even though I think that that's the best aspect of the book, I still didn't find his writing about the main character to be that good anyway. It was so blanketed, and I could kind of sense that it seemed a little bit overwritten. I did read that a lot of his main characters, Houellebecq's main characters, kind of fall into similar tropes. So it's not surprising for me to hear that, Matt, that this is just kind of like a tiresome character that he's writing about. But I was actually thinking about Simenon a little bit and Dirty Snow, and just how I think I was just wishing I was reading a Simenon book, because I was
That's
like,
great.
the characterization that Simenon can take out of a character and the lack thereof that Houellebecq tries to character, like he's trying to do something that is just it wasn't even that interesting to me. Like, he's talking about how he hates that there's no Wi-Fi in the hotels and that he's just like on porn sites. It just felt like a lazy writing of this character. There's no personality to even his like depression,
which again, right, like, I get it. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. His depression, right. You sort of made my point for me in the last thing you said there, but like, it's not just that it's not that he's just depressed and that's the sort of generic Houellebecq character, right? This is a book about, I mean, again, we can talk more about the more explicitly political aspects of this later, because that is a big part of my problem with this book. But even just the characterization of Francois, it's this generic loss of meaning for Western man, and the sort of like demystification of religion and the sort of lack of resonance. But even on those scores, it strikes me that even for fucking 2013, Houellebecq has a profound failure of imagination. Like, his description of like late capitalist malaise and depression is so banal. And again, like, we're coming at it from 8 years on, and things have certainly, I would argue, gotten worse even since 2013. But his description of that sense, that feeling is, and don't get me wrong, I think there's some beautiful passages in this book and some sort of really interesting, like when Francois goes to the like monk community, the abbey or whatever. I think there's some interesting passages there. I think the end is really interesting. But in general, it's sort of like if your best if the best thing you can come up with to capture like loss of meaning in life is like having sex with prostitutes, it's just not that interesting to me. It's not as shocking as he wants it to be. And I think it betrays his fundamental conservatism in a lot of ways, that the last, the final steps before complete nihilistic sort of suicide are like, I jerked off in a hotel room. That's like the worst thing you can think of. It's I don't know. So I think I think you put it really well, Paul. Even in his depression, there's no uniqueness to it. There's no character to it. And maybe that's part of the point. But again, I will probably repeat this phrase over the course of the evening a number of times. Just because something is the point doesn't mean it's a good point. I think that applies to a lot of this book.
And I just want to like piggyback that, like, that is, I so firmly just agree. I don't know. I think we're on the same page across the board, like all three of us a little bit at the moment. Like a lack of imagination is one of the things that most bugged me. I'm like, bro, it's way worse in some ways. Like you lack the imagination to describe the ways or think of the different like horrific ways in which, whatever, like you said, like late capitalist malaise just erodes your will to live.
Right.
There's a huge lack of depth to the depression, his depression and his malaise. And it made me think, I was thinking of like Biden supporters reading this and people in that age bracket just being like, oh wow, this is so like, it's so ew, like he's having sex with prostitutes. Wow, I wouldn't do that. I'm 65 years old. That's incredible. Like, and I feel
I love my wife, and I voted for Elizabeth Warren.
But it did seem like dad, like a dad book.
Yes,
like a 55-year-old to 75-year-old grandpa,
and
trying to be
which
like
he
edgy.
is.
Yeah, which the author is. Yeah, and it kind of it sort of felt like when a director who's old tries to write a script or something and make dialogue for teenagers. There's a little bit of that to it too. Just like there's something that's not lining up with what you're doing.
I know I mentioned this I think on the last episode, or no, 2 episodes ago when we were talking about Evan Dara, which was just released today, the day we're recording this, or yesterday. But anyway, it was the same. Again, I had that sense of the On Cinema Oscar special, Tim Heidecker talking to his young stepson, trying to sound cool and being like, yeah, dude, you just fucking like just play Fortnite and like just like blow people's heads off and shit, dude. You just fucking like jerk off or like, and it's just like trying to be, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's not edgy, it's not descriptive, it's not evocative.
But what makes it worse too is that the age gap isn't even that big. Like he's writing about a 45-year-old character. So you'd think he'd have a better understanding, but maybe that's the thing though. Maybe the depth of that age group of people is shallow, and that is provocative to those people. I don't know.
All I can do is, and the other thing I have a problem with is just how dated the book is. Like, again, above almost anything else he's written, like this has suffered the most from time.
Yeah.
Most notably because, he's prognosticating, he's making a prediction, which is, always the death knell of like in the near future type of fiction. But like, all I can think of is like the climate in 2015 in the US, which is where, we live.
Did I say 2013 earlier? That's my bad.
Yeah. I mean, although I think like he was writing it 2013 onward.
I appreciate the assist.
Alley-oop. And like I think one of the things, like if I remember, like I know where I was at in 2015, and it's like, obviously like the rumblings of Trump were happening. So I don't know. I feel like, you know, normally I wouldn't rope that in so much, but like, because like you were saying, Gabe, it's kind of like someone taking incredibly topical trends in culture, in his culture in France, and like running a guess as to what would happen if, you know, as long as those things continue at the same level and never change. uh like, I'm just thinking about like American audiences and how squeamish and like weirdly receptive we would be to some sort of pessimistic but still indicative. I don't know. It was a weird time where like a novelist could have a quick impact in a way that I don't
Right.
think has been true and isn't true now.
Yeah.
We were like, please, like some luminary or even just
Explain this to us.
or even somebody I hate, but please describe what it is I'm hating, or like what, you know, the shape of the danger that's approaching me. And like, I don't know. That's kind of another. It's a little vague what I'm describing, but
No,
like,
I don't think
well-
so. I think it makes total sense. And I think that's the risk you take. I mean, I think, right. And we can talk about the way he talks about the shape of that danger, which I think is interesting in and of itself, because again, you know, I don't think this book is particularly Islamophobic. Although I do think it's a little reductive, and I think it's, well, we can talk about that in a minute, but it's like, yeah, I just, it doesn't have the same, and again, not necessarily the fault of the book, but this is a risk you take when you root a text so specifically in contemporary things. Like, just the reference, even Paul, that you ran on the back to you porn. I'm like, dude, I can pay a girl now $5 to floss her teeth with her own pubes, like in 2 seconds. You know what I mean? And like, you're talking about jerking off to you porn in a hotel, like it's this degenerate, like super scandalous thing. And it just comes off as stupid and naive at this point.
yeah.
I would even suspect that it was that way when it was published too. I mean, to a lot of people, if I read this book back then, I probably would have thought the same thing. It just seems like, which is, I think that's why I wanted to read some of the reviews of it too, because I'm still just like taken aback to how this was like a New York Times best seller. I mean, it says New York Times book review. It's like book of the year, notable book of the year. It's just, I'm really surprised by it, because it just, for so many reasons, but the lack of depth being one of them.
There's a lot of PR. I mean, yeah.
Well, and I mean, I think that just again goes back to what Matt said, that at the time there was a sort of clamoring for some established, intelligent-ish person to put out a take on this stuff, right? Like, put out a sort of primer, an explanation, like where is this coming from? What's happening? Help us make sense of this. And I think that this was that. And that's why it took off so much. Obviously, the Charlie Hebdo thing, like, accelerated that even further. But I think the general like vibe of the time was of wanting someone to kind of produce a text like this.
Right. Like definitely growing dread across, you know, Europe and the U and like North America or whatever, of just like something's about to break. Something's about to be different. And just that alone being enough to fuel sales. Like, I know I bought this book because it was like because of the PR, probably. I was just like, it was like, ooh, this is kind of like the dangerous book that like you don't read or you're bad. And I was like, fuck you, I'm buying it. And I did.
Wait, so Matt, you read this, when did you read it then? First?
A little bit before. No, I think I read it, like, it came out in the US pretty quickly after it was published in France. So like either 2015 or like very early 2016. It was before Trump.
Kind of around Jordan Peterson coming into power as
Which
well.
is not irrelevant.
Not irrelevant. Part of the same sort of basic trends of like people seeking guidance, I would say.
Yeah. That's actually sort of one of my fundamental like takes on the book, is that it's obviously, and this is why people think it's like subtle and stuff, because they see all this sort of hubbub about, oh, it's Islamophobic, it's racist, it's this and that, and it's not really. And if anything, again, I think it's a little reductive. It paints with a little bit of a broad brush. I think it's telling that the book that the dean or president of the university or whoever, I think it's telling that the book he uses to explain Islam to Francois is like basically a children's book written for a general audience.
Yes,
because I think basically that's the best Houellebecq himself could do, because that's about as far as his understanding of Islam goes. But I also think that people saw the PR and the controversy and some of the interviews around the book and stuff, and were like, oh, this is this Islamophobic screed. It's this fucking, just horribly racist text. And it's not. It actually paints Islam in a generally sort of favorable light from Francois's perspective, in the sense that it's his kind of like last lifeboat in terms of getting meaning back in his life, right? He discovers he's sort of presented with this opportunity to convert to Islam, and he sort of starts writing again. He starts getting like re-engaged in his work, and he starts sort of like becomes reinvigorated in a way. But that in and of itself doesn't exhaust the conservatism of the book. The fact that it's not Islamic doesn't mean it's not conservative. The conservatism, or is not Islamophobic, sorry. The conservatism in the book is that Houellebecq sees Islam as this sort of necessary self-discipline for the West that has strayed so far from the path of meaning and strayed so far from its sort of religious roots. And he sees Islam as basically this, big dick Chad that can come in and discipline us in the ways that the Western religions, Catholicism and Protestant Christianity, have ceased being capable of doing. And Islam can kind of whip the West back into shape in some ways.
He describes Christianity as being feminine.
Yeah.
And he's like,
yes,
it's literally like it's a bitch ass religion for pussies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and Francois sort of tries to convert to Catholicism as Huysmans did in real life, and it doesn't work, and he's not feeling it or whatever. And I think, again, like you said earlier, Matt, Francois as the sort of stand-in for France itself, and France as a stand-in for the West in turn,
right?
Houellebecq seems to think we need that. We need that discipline. We need that sort of being whipped into shape by the Chad Islam, and who has its house in order, to get back to Jordan Peterson. And that's how we're going to get meaning back. That's how we're going to get purpose back. And that's the conservatism in the book. It's not that it's Islamophobic, it's that it sees in Islam a way back to the sort of traditional forms of religious meaning. And that's the most fucking conservative thing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with like everything you just said. And I think Francois, he only sees himself as someone who can participate in some sort of structure. Like he just lacks so much individualization within himself, even within his depression. He just had there's not much to him at all, and he needs some sort of societal structure in order to feel happy. Like he needs by the end, he's like, yeah, I kind of like that all the women are now like covered up with traditional whatever, because now I'm not looking at them and I'm not thinking about sex. It seems like such a roundabout huge plan to just get to himself feeling okay about how he interacts with the world and society. And I just kept thinking, like, dude, you're just a bad individual. Like everything how you've lived your life, you don't need this giant change in society. You don't need a resurgence of a Western structure to achieve any form of happiness or whatever. But he only believes that. Like he only believes that people need that. He needs that. That's what France needs. And it was just really depressing to think that like people can think that way. But
I want to push back. I like I know what you mean, but I don't think he's actually like stoked. I would argue that he's not necessarily stoked on Islam. I would just complicate it by saying I don't think he thinks there's some, you know, Chad like restoration of order by having a father figure come in and sort the house out. I would put Houellebecq into more of the just like I think he regards himself as somebody who's floating cosmically above everything, and therefore like even the restoration of order via this more, I don't know, vibrant this religious belief that has more zealots and people who are like not even zealous but just sort of like filled with the spirit of the thing, uh is not, it's just not necessarily a positive. I don't think he sees it as restoring order. I think he sees it as like a sad reality of whatever moment he's writing about.
Well,
Maybe,
I think he's
although
a sad boy, so he's always going to be sad about whatever.
That's true. I'm just
Francois
saying
whatever
is
happens.
Connor Oberst.
Conner.
Connor Oberst.
Conner.
Connor Oberst.
the Aubert Rapport.
Okay. Oh my god. No, I mean, I should maybe sharpen a little bit. I don't think he's stoked on Islam. I think he's stoked on pre-made systems of meaning making that we can grab onto as the best way to make our way through the world. Order was also probably a poor choice. I don't think it's about order. I think it's about sort of meaning in your life and purpose. I mean, maybe that's sort of those are synonyms in some ways, but I don't think he's stoked on any particular of Islam. I don't think he's interested in Islam specifically as a religion, but I do think I don't know. I have a hard time finding a way to get around the idea that he is lamenting the loss of meaning, and he thinks that it matters that coincides with a certain type of loss of religion. And if Islam is the religion that comes in and fills that gap, I don't think he cares particularly, but it is the fact that some religion or some pre-made kind of prefabricated system of meaning is coming in and we can grab onto it. And he thinks that is a good thing.
I think Houellebecq has said like that essentially he's got that kind of Dostoevskian outlook of if there's not God, then everything is permitted. And like
exactly, which is the most conservative view possible.
Potentially, although my question is more like because God is this repository for so much, right? Like descriptions of how to live or meaning or our relationship with the infinite is I agree with you that Houellebecq is like very conservative, and I think he's ultimately just lamenting the loss of something and not celebrating his theoretical introduction of what could save it. However, I do agree with the general notion that like a religious impulse is something that people have, and that there's like scientific materialism. There's like a guy that's kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson who comes in at some point in the book and stuff like,
well, actually,
right, like we're actually made of starlight crushed in a black hole.
I hated that so much. It felt like Houellebecq just read like a chapter of like Carl Sagan's book and was like, "Ooh, this would be good to put in here. I'll sound smart."
No, I think he genuine like again. I think Houellebecq's smart. I just don't agree with at all with like his viewpoint on how things function.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's whether he's smart or not is immaterial, and so is whether or not he's a good writer. He can put a sentence together, right? But
he's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
My only point from that little thing was just like, do you think there's some sort of instinct to worship, or is like religious impulse an elastic enough notion to incorporate like things that maybe people wouldn't traditionally think apply?
I mean, well, worship. All I know about worship is in the context of Taylor Swift's legs.
I think I still have a chance with her. We're both single. This is why you should have listened to that Keegan Craig debate, Matt. This would have been perfect for your question.
Okay, well, enlighten me through your understanding of it.
Okay, I'll try to sum up this hour-long discussion that I just listened to. But I think it was Keegan, the one who was arguing against the need for God to have morality.
Right.
His point is that, like, why can't we just basically set up a system of rules which we already have and follow what we think is good and what we think is evil? Why do we have to look to some cosmic entity, God, Muhammad, to get those types of answers when we know just on an individual basis what is good, what is evil, what is pain? It doesn't, like, if I like punch a 10-year-old girl, that is bad. Like, it gives her pain. It makes me feel weird. I just punched.
I wouldn't like to see that.
Yeah, it would give everyone pain. And there doesn't need to be anyone else involved in that to make that. God doesn't need to be watching me and say, you did a bad thing. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, I did do a bad thing. So, like, we already know that it's bad. Gabe can probably speak on this more clearly than me, but I think what you were saying, though, like, I think a lot of people still in society haven't really even thought about that question. Like, they just assume that you need some sort of higher structure, you need God in society in some way in order to have a system, especially a system of morality. And maybe God needs to be involved in governance in some way too. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's already complicating the issue. I
What do you
don't
mean?
have an answer myself. I'm just curious because, like, I think the idea of a religious impulse is a capacious notion. Like, there's a lot of ways in which you can interpret that maybe don't fall in line with just like an adherence to dogma in the traditional ways we think of it.
I think there's a couple questions, and we're maybe getting in the this is actually the philosophy crackers.
Yeah, we're getting into
I mean,
it now.
We got to do it though.
No, I know, no. It is. It's obviously relevant to the book, but I mean, there's a distinction between the empirical fact of a religious impulse, right? That might be true or false. I'm not like a neuroscientist or a psychologist. The relevant question for this book and in terms of moral thinking is, are we better or worse off following that impulse? Should we try to resist it or embrace it? Houellebecq seems to me to be pretty clear that we ought to embrace it. And I think that's a conservative and also very stupid and bad position to put my fucking cards on the table.
Yeah, especially as he seems to define it. But however, I think what Paul was kind of skirting around with that debate that I haven't watched, it is more just again, this is what I mean by, like, it's fucking variable, and I'm not quite sure how to define it. It's just more like, are there rules? Are there, like, I think, Gabe, you have described yourself as believing in objective ethics. I would describe those as rules that, like, undergird a thing, and, like, there you can start to claim to see the existence of a structure, and it's like,
So this is okay. Yeah. I don't want to just run through the debate. This is, by the way, this is a debate between Shelley Kagan, who's a Yale philosophy professor of moral theory, and William Lane Craig, who's a well-known Christian apologetics guy. He had a moment on YouTube years ago, back sort of similar in, sort of when Sam Harris and all those people.
I remember that shit.
Yeah. But the debate is interesting because Craig is a fabulous debater. The guy is a fucking wizard with words and making people look and seem stupid. And this is one of the few debates where he just is pretty transparently blown out, like out of his depth. And the discussion, the crux of the discussion is, why do we need, or what does it mean for a moral rule to be objective? Does it have to be judged by some neutral, all-powerful third party? Or is it enough that we all agree intersubjectively that this thing is important or that we shouldn't do this thing? And Kagan is arguing that, of course, like what reason, what do we need more than it matters to us? Why does it need to matter in some capital M cosmic sense? Isn't it mattering to us good enough to organize our behavior around? And I think Houellebecq rejects that. I think Houellebecq thinks you need some third party cosmic force in order to derive meaning in your life. And I think that's absurd and harmful.
I think that's, yeah. And you were out of the room, Gabe, but I use the example of like, if I punch a 10-year-old girl in the face, I don't need a God character to tell me that I did the wrong thing. It's like,
she could tell you that. She could tell you that you did a wrong thing.
Exactly. And her family, who was right there in this scene, they saw it. They would tell me. But yeah, I think it's clear in the book too that Francois, like he needs that meaning to, or he starts to like think about God again after talking to his Muslim friend, and he has this moment where he's like suddenly like, wow, if God exists, I'm doing all these awful things. It's like he needed that little bit of thought about God potentially being real in order to like think about his behavior.
Can I read a passage that's connected to this point? Or wait, were you done, Paul? I'm sorry.
No, I'm pretty much done. Yeah, it's fine.
No, it's not. It's not fine.
It's not fine.
No, I'm not mad.
I'm joking.
No, that was pretty much all I wanted to say. I was just saying that he seems to need that overbearing godlike force in order to question his behavior.
Right. And I think that, again, we can't have it both ways, right? Either Francois is an everyman, or he's some satirical figure that Houellebecq is making up in an exact, like, and I think we should return to the satire question, because I think it's important. And I can hear some subset of people who might listen to this episode screaming this whole time, it's satire, it's a satire. He's not earnestly saying any of this stuff. It's a satire. It's a satire. Yeah. It's not. You're wrong and stupid.
There's a Paris Review interview with him where he says as much too, just by the way.
That it is a satire?
That it is not.
Right.
I think Gabe, you brought this up in our chat or whatever before, but like Houellebecq has the famous quote, like, how do you write these things? And he says, I write as though I'm dead. But people treat him as though he were. And it's like, no, yeah. He's a living dude who will voice his opinions and stuff. Like he can continually be available for interview and stuff. And like, so yeah, that was something that actually I was wrestling with until I read some claims or just some discussions about submission and stuff. He was like, no, I don't really see it as satirical wholly. It's like there's some funny bits. That's how he described it. Basically, he's like, I injected humor where I felt necessary, but mostly it's not that funny. So
yeah, and I think I think he's right about that. That's how I felt about the book too. I mean, and I think that, like, again, right? Like, this guy is not fucking Pynchon, right? He's not a fucking hermit that never speaks to anybody. He's out there giving interviews on fucking French news and shit. And unless you have some grand theory of Houellebecq's entire career as like a performance art piece, then at some point we have to start taking just the words he says seriously. And I think to just say everything is satire, everything's a joke, none of it is it. And again, even that in and of itself is a classic right-wing move, to just say it's all satire, it's all a joke, it's not serious, none of it's real, none of it's serious, it's all satire, it's all satire, it's all satire.
Please listen to the Bolaño episode.
Yes.
Which I think is perpetually of relevance, and one of the reasons why I chose it. And Bolaño has a whole fucking book I found out about science fiction as a genre that I really want to read, because I was thinking about why I liked Possibility of an Island and not these other books by Houellebecq. and like I don't know. Am I being fed a pill through, that's in a bunch of peanut butter, or am I like still as critically engaged as I would be normally? Anyway.
So here's the passage I want to read, that I wanted to read in this sort of connection. This is on 184 to 185, if you guys want to follow along with it.
Okay.
Under an Islamic regime, women, at least the ones pretty enough to attract a rich husband, were able to remain children their entire lives. No sooner had they put childhood behind them than they became mothers and were plunged back into the world of childish things. Their children grew up, then they became grandmothers, and so their lives went by. There were just a few years where they bought sexy underwear, exchanging the games of the nursery for those of the bedroom, which turned out to be much the same thing. Obviously, they had no autonomy, but as they say in English, fuck autonomy. And to me, I think that's sort of the point of the book. Fuck autonomy. Give me the rules, tell me what to do, and that's how I will sort of find meaning. I think, again, it's easy to read that passage talking about veiled women buying sexy lingerie and sort of infantilizing them, and it's all problematic, of course. But the real problem with that passage is the end, where it's, no, this is actually all a good thing. We should all want this, right? We should not, our autonomy is not valuable. Our own choices are not sort of the locus of meaning. It's our ability to self-discipline and conform to a set of rules that's provided by some higher authority.
Yeah, and it's funny because he's a pretty like decent critic on occasion of just like consumerism and the malaise. I mean, he's simplified the ways in which that manifests, and honestly underestimates how strange and perverse and bad it actually is in a lot of ways. But fuck, I fucking lost the thread.
I don't know what thread you on, but just because you brought it up, I'll throw in here that in terms of the description of capitalist malaise and stuff, I just want to plug Mark Fisher, because Houellebecq seems to me to just be a less perceptive right-wing Mark Fisher. Like if you want to sort of get a decent handle on someone who has, and Fisher is also engaged in the sort of like specific examples that are sort of au courant and whatever of
right.
And in 30 years Mark Fisher may look fucking completely out of touch, but if that's your sort of vibe, I don't think you can do a lot better.
I guess all I was trying to get at was that like in his overcorrection into the other realm, there's a brief moment where he hits on the truths that I think give people the sense that he is overall correct. Does that make sense? Like his criticisms overlap with like what I would regard as the truth, right? Like this shit sucks. People are adrift. There is a malaise going on as like consumer capitalism just like guts every relationship or sense of connection or meaning, blah blah blah. I think that's the Venn diagram overlap that causes this cognitive dissonance in certain people, where like otherwise they would not go in the next phase of Houellebecq's thought, but it's because it's the same idea as like every lie contains the right amount of truth or something like that.
And I mean, again, I think he's correct, and it's talking about that Venn diagram. Like I would overlap with Houellebecq in many ways in terms of the diagnosis of the problem.
Right.
His understanding of what the solution ought to be is fucking insane to me.
Should we talk about any plot points?
Yes, that's probably a good idea on a podcast.
Other characters too, maybe.
Right, because you got it starts very bare bones. Like, right, you got Francois, and he's a professor at the Sorbonne. He is a expert in J.K. Huysmans, decadent French author, whose life Francois kind of also mirrors. It's like a kind of, transposed in time, but like just the same issue, except for, notable limits where Huysman, right?
Which I think is not accidental, like the
No,
link to decadence.
no.
And because that's that again is the language of the sort of right-wing decline of the West people, right? The West is irretrievably decadent. We're degenerates is another common term these people use. And I think Houellebecq is purposely mobilizing that language in an earnest way. Again, I don't think this is satirical.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing before we, like, the other night we were texting a little bit. I said like something like, what I'm reading on the paper, it just kind of is what it is. Like what he's saying is just clearly what I read as like what Houellebecq actually feels. And I just found my own personal experience reading it, I did not find it to be satirical like whatsoever. I actually looked up the definition of satire.
Right on.
The use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices. And I mean, I didn't laugh at all. Really, I didn't find any of it really funny. I didn't really find anything ironic. Exaggeration maybe, but the ridicule I barely caught too. So to me, if you're just thinking about it in like an objective sense of the definition, I just feel like it missed the marks. And for people to claim that this is a satire, I'm just like, have you ever actually read a satire or seen a satirical movie? Like this it seemed just like a blatant fictionalized story.
What's the classic line about satire? If it doesn't have like a clear target, it has to have a clear target or whatever, lest it be mistaken for earnest. Whatever. You know that line, Matt? Or Paul? You're
Not really.
I'm gonna look
No.
at.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Paul. And also there are different types of satire as well. I mean, it's a more complicated idea than this. Like, he's not doing he's doing science fiction again, basically, more than anything else, I would say. Speculative fiction,
Yeah.
He's not taking the truths of of a situation and exaggerating them, which is like, I think, Manipian satire, where you like kind of play the like kind of, I mean, to put it crassly, like Stephen Colbert, like you be the person and just over identify with them to the point where you kind of like do an ad absurdum on like their viewpoint or reductio, whatever it's called.
Which is probably the defenders of this book are the people that say that that's what Houellebecq was doing through Francois, right? But Houellebecq has said that this isn't that in interviews.
What's the reductio? Where's the absurdity? Like,
right.
It seems to me that he goes to great lengths to make the situation seem plausible. He describes vote breakdowns in the French election. He describes like the political maneuverings of the various parties and why this party did this based on their interest set and all of that. There's no absurdity. There's no comedy. There's no it's very earnest, and he goes to great lengths to make it seem plausible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the comedy is in the areas where Houellebecq would probably be the most well versed, which is like intelligentsia shit and like the literati of France.
I think he falls on his face with respect to that too. Personally, as an academic, I think someone who's in academia, sort of, obliquely at least, adjunct instructor, as they say.
Come on now.
Hearing it.
It's here. Okay, here's the satire quote, and then I'll talk about the academia thing.
Yeah.
This is, I don't know. Apparently, there's no agreement on where this comes from. It's sort of an apocryphal sort of internet thing. But it says satire requires a clarity of purpose and target, lest it be mistaken for and contribute to that which it intends to criticize. And I think Houellebecq runs afoul of that pretty constantly in this book. there's no clear target for me. Maybe the sort of, as you were saying, Matt, the French intellectual class. But again, there's no clarity. It's not funny. There's no sort of absurdity to it, which would signal that it's a satire. And his depiction of academic life is sometimes accurate in his descriptions of like, I mean, I thought the very beginning was interesting, where Francois talks about not realizing that his life was basically over when he finished his dissertation. That's kind of true. There are aspects of Francois's subjective experience of his relationship to the people that he studies that I think are accurate and resonant with me personally, at least. But his description of academic life in general is ridiculous, and I think that in a non-funny way. Like, to me, satire, okay, it should be ridiculous but also funny and identifiable. But like, over the course of like basically 3 months, like professors at the Sorbonne start taking child brides. Like, it's stupid. Like, it's just stupid. And I don't find it particularly funny. And it's not presented comedically. It's presented very earnestly. It's this kind of like fat, ugly guy who's like, oh, I have meaning now because the Islamic party that's in control offered me a child bride.
Right. Yeah.
Which is not funny. It's sad.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right. It is so earnest that there's no opportunity for it to be funny at all. It's just presented so matter-of-factly.
Paul, you're very crackly now.
Go.
We're back. Hey, sorry. Paul's audio is so good that we had technical problems, but we are back.
I think my audio system's like, am I real? Did you really buy me just to talk about this type of shit? I should be doing better stuff with my gear.
Yeah, your mic is having a fucking yeah.
Yeah.
Paul's mic is woke, dude. It's like Houellebecq is Islamophobic.
Yeah, it's
it's protesting. It's AI.
Nah. Yeah. Whoa, time to break down.
But yeah, we were talking about the earnestness of Houellebecq and how it's the situations that should be or could be presented as funny or outrageous. They're too earnest. They don't have any humor to them.
And he's said as much. That's the other thing that like really like fucking seals the deal. Like he says as much, you know. Like, I think it could be funny, the description of certain like tenets of Islam being like completely consonant with like a conservative agenda, you know, which it seems like that could be like, that's like a kind of funny thing when he's describing like the kind of political positioning that Ben Abbas, who's the Muslim Brotherhood candidate,
who is described as essentially a giga Chad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice smile.
Again, I think a little damningly as just like a good politician. You know, he's kind of like it just in the sense of like more of like Machiavelli. Like he knows how to run his actually incredibly you know, ambitious line of eventually just gets described as like he's described as Emperor Augustus, and he's trying to like recreate Roman dominance.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fucking point. It's like this,
right?
It's return to tradition, but the avenue, you know, it's literally our way of life must be preserved meme. But Houellebecq is just saying that the avenue to that preservation might not be what we thought it was. It's not going to be Christianity. It's not going to be, you know, Catholicism. It's going to be Islam, and that's okay.
Yeah, those veins are tapped and collapsed, and what we're going to do is this.
Right.
By any means necessary, sort of. Yeah. And then like so again, I'm trying to like backpedal to some other plot points because I feel like maybe they're important. But so initially, you know, spoilers, the Islamic Brotherhood wins some landslide elections in France, and then like towards the end of the book, like other European countries. And there's talks about Morocco and Algeria and Tunisia being added to the EU. But yeah, Gabe was describing all of these. This is why I think the speculative fiction thing comes into play more than an actual satire. It's just like, you know, I feel like people could say that like Starship Troopers was satirical, but it is also the genuine.
I think they would have a better case than the people who say this book is satirical.
But still, right? Like a sci-fi instantiation of the genuine wishes of the author. And again, this is why I brought up that Bologna thing where, you know, he's the whole like sci-fi being the best vehicle for this kind of thing. But yeah, there's all these breakdowns about like demographics and like voter turnout for the different parties. I mean, France has a political system that, in full confession, I'm not like fully familiar with. I know it's a two-party running in tandem kind of thing, but that does play a large part in it. And he describes like percentage breakdowns of voters and you know, yeah, like Gabe was saying, he goes through great pains to make it seem like a practical outcome.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe a way to have made it more satirical would be to set it way in the future or something, like you were saying, like actually make it like sci-fi or something. I think that the half-life of this book was just so short. It feels like it could only be relevant to a certain type of person within a certain amount of years after it was published. And now it just seems like, what? The world's so different. This didn't happen. It's like he took a risk or something, and it would have not been such a risk if it was set in the future, like way farther or something. I don't know.
And I think the speculative fiction connection that Matt's making is relevant too, because I actually, some of the most just viscerally, like literarily enjoyable parts of the book for me were when he's kind of describing the lead up to the takeover of the Islamic Party, and there's riots in the street, but Francois is like not really there, but he kind of vaguely knows they're happening. And and there's a, you know, he tries to leave Paris, and like his girlfriend at the time who is Jewish and afraid of the Muslims taking over, flees to Israel, right? And I forget her name, but Miriam, yeah. And I thought those scenes were kind of effective. They were like ominous and kind of like purgy and like fucking just, you know what I mean? Like you could feel the tension and the sort of like, I don't know. This I would give this book a few points on sci-fi elements. And but I thought that was effective. And I also think the closest Houellebecq gets to tapping into something that is genuinely representative of the kind of like what we've been calling the late capitalist malaise or whatever, is when he describes that scene where I think, you know, Francois is trying to flee Paris and he stumbles upon that gas station where there's been a shooting, and he just kind of like steps over the bodies and like doesn't even notice that they're there basically, and he's like looking for gas.
That feels so much more like a J.G. Ballard thing or something though.
Yes.
That's what
that tone is nowhere else in the book. It's only in that scene, and it's like, if that to me is where you could get to, oh, this is satirical, this is something, but it's literally one scene. It's like a paragraph.
Well, I was just trying to agree, Paul. Like you brought up Dirty Snow. I think that's a great fucking example. Like, you know, like it's not like we're averse to cynicism or you know, satirical and highly political literature, anything like that. It's just that, like, honestly, we've seen better and darker.
Yeah.
And we also lived through this portion of time, which is another thing that allows us the perspective to like kind of like be a little bit more like, nah, I don't know. Like I know I'm not French, but like I bet this isn't reflective of the genuine reality of it, both a simplification and an justification in turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, he just fucking fell short, didn't he? Big time swing and a miss.
Yeah, the Miriam stuff. I liked some of the political analysis. I thought that was like the other times he was a little funny. Here we go. I got a little highlight here. So he just this is kind of earlier on. I think it's like page 28. It just says a center-left candidate would be elected, serve either 1 or 2 terms, depending how charismatic he was. Then, for obscure reasons, he would fail to complete a third. When people got tired of that candidate, the center-left in general, we'd witness the phenomenon of, quote, democratic change, and the voters would install a candidate of the center-right, also for 1 or 2 terms, depending on his personal appeal. Like, you know, that is a pretty decent summation of like America's own situation currently.
No, it is. But it's also this kind of like, again, and you referenced this before, Matt. So this is sort of consonant with Houellebecq's like general disposition. It's this disengaged, kind of radical centrist, above it all thing, which is, if you're writing a political novel, just like, I think gets to the point that we're at, where it just feels like nothing is being said. It feels like eating fucking packing peanuts.
Yeah. Well, I think also that passage, you know, I think that maybe that's what attracted you to him in his other novels. Maybe he does seem to have a grasp of the malaise in society. But I think this novel, you know, he might have a criticism of the West in a way, but it's almost like he just wants it to work again. Like he actually wants the hierarchy and the patriarchy back. So he senses that something's wrong with it, but his answer for the things that are wrong, his solution is, I want an overarching system of rules to follow again, and we've lost that, and that's where the malaise comes from, and we need to get back to those old roots.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have some more to say?
I was going to say, like, that's where I think you can be a person that understands and sees what is wrong with the world, but if your solution is like, you know, make it strong or go back to roots, it's like, okay, you understand that there's something bad happening, but your solution is just like atrocious.
Turn to tradition,
wrong.
baby.
The only complication I would say is like, I don't think Houellebecq, I think Houellebecq, through the character of Francois, is describing how that the return to tradition doesn't function any longer. And that's like, because Francois is trying to have all the, you know, he has all these historical reference, you know, Huisman being the main one, of people who were capable of religious conversion in a genuine sense. And like, I think one of the things that makes his conversion, or the question of his conversion at the end, different is that still, you know, what's dangled in front of his face that he ends up accepting is like women and money. Like he's still doing a consumer choice by the end.
I have mixed feelings about that, because I think that's right, and I think that that's certainly a part of it, that sort of like systems of religious meaning become reduced, not just religious meaning full stop, get reduced to consumer choices. But I also think that there is this, if you read the pages leading up to that final chapter where he does get this kind of joie de vivre back, that isn't just more money, it's not just the women, he becomes interested in his work again, he starts writing again. Like it is a sort of genuine you know, awakening is probably too strong a word, but it is a genuine sort of fire that's lit in him that goes beyond, certainly it's more than he got with his dalliance with trying to convert to Catholicism, right?
But I yeah, but like, I think it's also made clear, like, in those last bits that like he has a final spurt of it where he's writing the preface to his what is it, like, new edition of his
it's like a
prior work
new edition
in the
of
Pleiades or
Huysmans'
whatever.
work. Yeah.
But the phrase, and now my now my intellectual life is over, happens before the end of the book.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. I think that like the key is still, he does get that for a moment, but again, it's so like transient and brief, and the deciding factor is just still like I can have, I've been told that based on my exorbitant new salary because the petrodollar Saudi kings are, giving so much to the educational system, I can afford 3 wives. He's like, I can get money and women, and like also just based on my own exposure to Houellebecq, these are the actual grounding principles of his view of life.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
No, which I think are bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just I just think it's different than what you're describing. Like
it's that well, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it seems like he if we were expecting him to just like fall in love with any religion, that would go against his character. I think you're right, Matt, that those are the two things that he cares most about, and he's accepting of the new structure because he now has a little boost of meaning, but he also is getting the two things he wants. So it's not like a love of Islam in his conversion. It's more just like an acceptance of it. That's I think. Like I don't expect him to become like
it's
devout.
because it gives him structure, though. It's because it gives him meaning, right? The other stuff, yeah, is there, but
well, it's part of the structure. Those are the things that are like, it's like,
right. Yes, exactly.
He loves the structure because he's allowed these things, and he also has found an ounce more of meaning, so he's less depressed, so he's accepting of the new state of the world.
Right. I think like it's not as if the money and the women is the only thing he's considering, right? I mean, Houellebecq spends fucking 20 pages or 25 pages detailing this conversation between Francois and the dean of the Sorbonne, or the president of the Sorbonne, right? Where who this guy is someone who's converted to Islam long before and written a book about it, and he's kind of selling him on Islam as an ideology, as a religion. And like Francois describes, that conversation sticking with him, and that sort of forces him into questioning some of his prior beliefs. And so I don't know. I think it's a bit reductive to say it's just a consumer choice. It's just him doing it because of the women and the money. I think that's not in the text.
No. Okay, so Rediger, right? The dean of the college, the new dean after Ben Abbas is elected, is that Neil deGrasse Tyson meets Islamic fundamentalist, almost like some bizarre.
He's religious though.
Not
right.
He's I would say he's a William Lane Craig type figure.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah.
I in my view of the book, he is the sort of Faustian bargain guy, but I think it comports with Houellebecq's conservatism still, where Houellebecq has never stopped mourning the death of the prior culture that gave birth to contemporary France and is now dying. Like, I just think he's just always there. That this new example is something that like could perform the same function as that prior culture that gave birth to the Enlightenment, but like is not preferable and is in fact inferior and still contaminated by like consumer capitalist choice and like the systems in place that were born out of, again, just a fundamentalist sort of Christian Catholic patriarchal society.
I mean, I think because I haven't read any.
Does that make sense, or am I just like fumbling through it?
No, it makes sense to me. I just don't think I read that through the characterization of Francois. Like maybe that's Houellebecq's views, and maybe because you've read other books by him, you're getting more of that sense. But I just thought, in terms of just this character, I didn't really get a sense that he was like romanticizing a fallen culture that he misses. Like he tries to. I mean, if that was the case, I feel like he would have went through with becoming a Catholic and wanted like a resurgence of that within himself.
Not
But he
Yeah,
doesn't.
I feel like I would actually class Houellebecq as a sort of counter Enlightenment figure. He's more like a Vico or like like Herder or somebody. Like he thinks that the Enlightenment was a
who's Herder?
mistake. These are just like German philosophers, and Vico was an Italian, but they were all sort of classed in the category of like the counter Enlightenment, right? That the Enlightenment was sort of a mistake. And I
Okay.
think Houellebecq is much closer to that than someone he's not interested in preserving Enlightenment values. He's interested in preserving subjective experiences of meaning. And if the best way to do that is through religion, so much the better. It's grounded in tradition. It's grounded in sort of stable values that don't change. That's what Houellebecq is interested in. Not, I genuinely don't really get where you're coming from describing him as like a wanting to return to the Enlightenment or something like that.
No, I misphrased myself. No, I think he's anti-enlightenment. I think he wants what you're describing. He wants to go back to the whatever came before. Like, but and then that is preferable to the fundamentalism that is like taking over now, or like whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't disagree. I think he's anti-enlightenment. Like, I think that's where he describes the like source of the problem originating, right? Like liberal individualism.
Yeah, there's passages where he talks about like women wearing like less clothing on the street and how it like I can't really think of exactly what he says, but
Peterson.
some yeah, it's like a distasteful Peterson speech.
He's like, what do you think of if so she's wearing blush in the office?
Yeah.
That's to show blood flow and arousal.
When you say women wearing less clothing and Peterson, I'm like, Michaela, baby, let's go.
Right. I mean, that's the
Totally.
classic conservative and their daughter. That's Rudy Giuliani and his daughter talking about fucking
Yes.
threesomes, baby.
I know what I'm doing after this podcast. Michaela.
Oh, that's okay. So we have a Patreon, but we don't yet have an OnlyFans.
Right.
So if anyone
Soon.
wants to see what Paul does after
To
the
Michaela
podcast,
Peterson.
oh God.
Stay
But no,
tuned,
I-
we'll-
Jerking off to Michaela Peterson to own the trads.
I think I'm agreeing with you guys though. Like Houellebecq is just mourning the prior version of the new instantiation that's happening now, right? I think it's pretty clear that he's anti-enlightenment and anti-secular humanist, and based on his other books, you know, like he has a lot to say about like the 60s and the sexual revolution, and like, you know, the environment that spawned the baby boomer mindset and all this kind of stuff, which again, you know, not fully incorrect, but just overemphasized and like reductive.
Yeah, I think that he has trouble maybe thinking about like what could come out of that. I mean, to me, it's just like it's a part of culture. It has been this like, you know, the 60s happened and people are more free now and sexual liberation, all that stuff is like a part of culture now. It's not going anywhere.
Are they more
Have-
free, Paul?
Who?
Us people.
No, I don't think. I mean, yeah, we are in a way, but I just think we do as a society, as a culture, like we do have a problem with finding meaning. I just think that Houellebecq has like no ability to grasp like that the individual can grasp their own meaning. Like he needs some sort of religious avatar at the peak of his understanding to find meaning within himself.
Right. And yeah. And I think when you look at Francois as a character, I do think you should not regard it as like fully Houellebecq's own personal beliefs about what would render meaning, but like so and that's why I'm like Francois is not Houellebecq.
Yeah, I think I'm lumping them in together
and
probably too much.
But however, it's close. It's negligible. And like Francois is a little more, I think, facile in his understanding of like what is lending his own life meaning. But at the same time, it doesn't vary too greatly from what I regard as like if Houellebecq's anything, he's just more unsure and nihilist and still conservative. And that's basically it. He's just more like I don't. He's just more like I don't know, which is something that I think Francois says a lot. He's like, just basically like the most Comden, the most what condemning thing that he says is just sort of often like I just don't know how I feel. I don't care. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
yeah, sure. Like the locus of Houellebecq's meaning, it seems to me, in based on his other books, is like way more biological materialism. Like,
Yeah,
it's just way more like reproduction and like
which does come through in this book and like the like
totally.
Well, and again, I think that this is one of the things that he sort of admires about Islam. Houellebecq personally, probably not Francois, though it does come through in Francois's character, is that even in that discourse between Rediger and Francois, like Islam recognizes the male attraction to the female body and it's biological and that's okay and we should embrace that. I think Houellebecq believes that personally, and I think it is expressed in that conversation.
Yes. Like we are, I think the main thing is like we are gene replication nodes, like, and that, the modes of sexual attraction are hardwired, and that's maybe one of the most reductive and like sexist and I think misogynist things that he thinks. Like, I think that's the most genuine that he gets. It's like here's the truth. Here's what I think the truth is. Like firm ass titties, you can't argue with it.
When a woman wears makeup, it's because she's trying to.
When she wears lipstick, it's the blood rushing to her face from sexual arousal. So when my penis gets hard at the copying machine, I'm getting fired. I'm like, well, fascism, basically.
I have a passage that I want to read to just submit to the group. Submit #submission. Get it? Because I'm submitting it to you.
Oh wow, good, nice. Submission. I love that.
I may be going too deep with this, but I do think there is also some racial realism in here in some small places, not in general. Like, I don't think this book is grossly Islamophobic in general. So this is on page 89 for me. It's right before this is not a chapter number. Okay. Anyway, so this is before Miriam leaves for Israel. She's just told him she's going to leave for Israel, and they've just had sex, and she's about to walk out of his apartment for basically the last time. And I think I misspoke earlier when I said that they were leaving because they were afraid that the Muslims were going to win. They were leaving because they were afraid that the right-wing party was going to win, the National Front,
right?
Which they don't wind up winning, of course. Okay, she steps into her skirt. Quote, with everything that's going on now, it's obvious the National Front is going to win. That's all we'll talk about at lunch. We told you so, sweetheart. Still, that's her parents. Still, they're good people. They only want what's best for me. Yes, they are good people, truly good people. But what about you? What will you do? What do you think is going to happen at school? Talking to him about the Sorbonne. We were standing at the door. I realized that I hadn't the slightest idea, and also that I didn't give a fuck. I kissed her softly on the lips and said, there is no Israel for me. Not a deep thought, but that's how it was. She disappeared behind the elevator doors. And in my most sort of SJW woke moments, that strikes me as like lamenting the lack of a white ethno state. There is no Israel for white men.
Yeah.
There is no safe haven for them to go to, because this whole thing is about her being able to go to her place in Israel to escape the persecution she's facing in France and in these these other countries where the right wing is going to take hold. And him saying that line just stuck with me. There is no Israel for me, coming from a white rich guy in France, like a white college professor. And I don't know, I found it to be kind of disturbing.
That is disturbing. It's horrible. Everywhere is Israel for you, dude.
Exactly.
You're a white intellectual French man. You can go anywhere. It's Israel.
There is a sort of Richard Spencer character in the book too. I forget what his name is. He's a professor, right?
Yeah,
who he talks to. I mean, the key word here is nativist,
right?
But that does create a wrinkle. So what the fuck is this dude's name? I feel bad that I don't know it.
It's fine. This is a book where the characters that aren't Francois are very kind of like loosely outlined. I would say there's not a lot of characterization going on for people that aren't Francois. The like, we know Ben Abbas, who is never physically in the story, but is described quite a bit. And that's kind of it. Like, we meet Miriam, we meet Rediger, and that's kind of...
I feel like Miriam is just described like by her appearance. You really don't get a sense of who she is. It's
totally.
Like she has a firm white ass.
Right.
Yes.
Basically.
That much we do know. There is another character who I also thought was actually pretty cool. Not cool, but interesting. I think it's Tenor. I liked the inclusion of French intelligence, or like an intelligence agency. Like, if you're doing a political novel,
that's
I think
the husband of one of his colleagues from the university,
the former
right?
dean, I believe.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the like basically like white nationalist guy, the nativist, where he just describes these nativists were Catholic, in many cases royalists, nostalgics, romantics at heart, and most were drunks. So I can't tell if that's like just trying to include the caveats in order to have done it, versus really, I don't know, demonize these people or discount their beliefs. The nativists in general are not who win, obviously, at the end. They are sort of the counter to the Muslim Brotherhood and Ben Abbas's whole thing. And there's also, the Salafists who are like also against Ben Abbas for being a centrist,
right?
A kind of, liberal Muslim, I guess, or whatever.
I think one thing that I found a little unbelievable, even though he went to great lengths to try to make it as believable as possible. Did you guys think that the change in the policies throughout the whole country just happened like way too fast?
It was absurd.
Yeah, it would never really happen.
No, like, I mean, it takes away my belief in the whole story that's so rooted in realism, and suddenly all these changes are taking place. I'm like, it doesn't happen in any government, any Western government. It's like it comes to a screeching halt because you just can't make changes.
It's like literally
opposing parties that are just like not wanting it to happen.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It wouldn't happen.
They literally basically overnight make all employees of the public education system convert to Islam. And like,
right,
again, that this is one of the fucking problems with the book, is like, that could be funny, that could be written in a funny way, and it's not. It's written like totally seriously and totally earnestly, and it is an absurd thing to anyone who understands how governments function or how the education system functions in any country. It is absurd in the sense that it is impossible, but it's not funny, and it's not written funnily. Which is why I'm like this. The people who are, it's satire. It just doesn't ring true.
Yeah, it's written as though this were not that much. The thing that the device Houellebecq seems to use in this book is like, it's just not that much different from what you experience anyway. I feel like, right? Like that's kind of like how he described, that's how he justifies a lot of incredibly radical changes that would not be digested by the culture with the
Right.
ease that they seem to be in the book. Like he's just like, no, like Ben Abbas is a hyper charismatic and like a salesman, and then also like this stuff is not far afield from, I don't know, like the hopes and existing structures that we have
Yeah.
for by conservative people.
The one of the best takes that I heard on this outline, this story, was from Morgan, who was on the last episode or 2 episodes ago.
Nice. Morgan's got a take. Nice.
She read like the first 40 pages or something. She didn't finish it, and I was describing her the plot and we were sort of talking about it, and she was like, well, if another way that this book could work is if it was a critique of the way that Christianity functions in Western countries, right? Presenting the sort of Islamic takeover as something that's totally, oh my God, we would never accept that. But that's actually how Christianity works in most Western governments, right? That's actually the truth. Christian values are sort of imbued in most Western governments and inform policy and shit at a very deep level. That would be funny. That would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not that. Both because it, and believable because it's real. But this is not that. Both because Houellebecq does not make that connection, at least not explicitly. If anything, he disconnects Christianity and Islam. And the other thing is that I said was, I think that would work in the context of the United States, but not in France. Houellebecq, I'm not a French scholar, but what I do know about France is that they are almost militantly secular in their public life. Mm-hmm. Last time I checked, it was something that you could be reprimanded for wearing a cross outside of your clothes in public in France. You're not supposed to do shit like that. And so it's like
hate speech in Germany or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I just even as someone who's talking about France as a Frenchman, I don't get where Houellebecq is coming from here. This idea that France would be so open and receptive to this Muslim takeover that could happen over the course of a couple months, when the sort of locus of French public and religious life is hiding and punishing expressions of religion. I genuinely don't get it. There feels like a gap there to me that is, I don't know how to bridge.
There's like a satirical setup that doesn't end up being a satire, basically. It's like the whole premise is so ripe for it, and that's not what ends up happening, and you feel like stifled by it.
Totally.
I think there is a connection between.
You feel a bit cocked by it.
It's not based, dude. There is a connection between Catholicism and Islam as like compatible, but again, it's not like that's not included. It's just, once again, like a lot of the stuff in this book, it's like included for the weird reason of creating a sense that this is all practical and highly realistic in its time frame. You know, because they're like, no, if there's anything, these are religions of the book, as he describes, and therefore, like they could find common ground more easily than an atheist and an Islamic person. It's like the same thing.
Yeah, they are compatible in the book, but they're compatible in a way that Houellebecq approves of, right? That they provide meaning, that they provide structure, that they provide sort of, something to latch onto in this fucking shit storm that we call life. Get that coffee. But that's the not funny way to talk about their compatibility. The funny way, the satirical way, would be to do what he does in this book, but also but make the compatibility about the way that our governments are structured around religion. And when it's about Christianity, we don't notice it. It doesn't upset us. But when it's about Islam, we get frothed at the mouth. That would have been funny, but that's not what he does.
No,
I don't even. And I also just don't think that was the point he was trying to make overall
No.
either. So why, like, it makes sense that he didn't do that for me because he wasn't trying to make that point.
No, it's just enlightenment, individualism, and by extension, capitalism and consumerism have hollowed out meaning, and that's what it means when he purchases a whore and heats up a microwave dinner and watches the news on his television and contemplates suicide idly.
Right. Houellebecq thinks Houellebecq thinks we need to return to monk, but without the E, just MONK.
All the passages that he mentioned suicide, they made me yawn pretty much because the characterization, like we talked about before, was just not there. So when he said, I'm having sex with these women and like whatever, it's not giving me any pleasure anymore. My rock hard dick is just hard, but I'm not receiving any pleasure.
Right.
Maybe I should kill myself. It missed the mark even then for me. And I'm the type of person that actually enjoys these kind of lost characters that like I usually connect with people like this. Like I have my own vices and lack of meaning, but it was amazing how a character that I thought I could potentially connect with just missed the mark so hard for me.
It's funny because I thought about this when we were talking about Houellebecq's sort of character preoccupations earlier, because I was like, in that sense, he's kind of like Murakami, Paul, who you like. All of his protagonists are basically the same, right?
Yeah, I was
sad boys who have a fucking, whatever, right? Like lost loves in Murakami, or are sexually and politically frustrated for Houellebecq or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's interesting that you made that point, because I know you're a Murakumer.
I am a Murakumer.
I was just thinking about him in terms of what I have loosely, with no substantial evidence, described as like a kind of French genre of misanthropy and like negativity. I mean, I was thinking of Celine. He gets a lot of comparisons to Celine, and like I don't know.
Celine Dion, right?
Right. Yes, Canadian. Yep. Which is French, basically. Yep. Kioran, E.M. Kioran, or
Kioran? Yeah, I think it's Kioran.
Is
it a hard C? I don't know.
Desaad and just like I think Moliere wrote a book called The Misanthrope, right? I'm pulling from
Meunier. I love French sauces.
Gruyere cheese.
Manure.
Yes, there we go.
That's it.
It feels a little bit like he's inherited a kind of tradition of writing that's very French in my kind of unworldly opinion. And also because he's writing in the style that I would just describe as more depressed than anything else, you get the limits of that viewpoint, which is an incredibly small, hermetically sealed, blinkered, kind of boring, one-dimensional viewpoint.
It's just yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, just like when you're depressed, when you're like in the throes of depression, like there is no way out. There's no dimension to the world. It's just fucking multiple ways in which to harm yourself, fuck yourself over, and arrive, all roads lead to you.
It just comes off as everyone that I knew in high school who thought that their depression was unique,
right?
And their depression was the first time anyone had ever felt this way, when in reality it's the most banal, stupid, normal thing anyone has ever felt in the history of humanity. And again, you can say that is Houellebecq's point. But I don't give a shit, and I don't want to read that. That's not a point that I'm interested in reading for fucking 200 pages. It's a stupid point.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I wanted to bring up was how this book just it didn't feel like a work of art to me at all. Like there was just like a lack of creativity that that a depressed person can usually like make a pretty interesting, like we've read some books by depressed people that their depression like fueled great characterizations, great stories, and great works of art. Like I'm thinking of Sleep Has Its House. That one was written by a very depressed individual, and it was a work of art. It was, she used
I would say the Guibert that we read last week.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It just felt like Houellebecq, he does seem like he could be a depressed person and has been for a long time, and it just seemed like going through the motions in a lot of ways. Even though he was trying to like make a statement with this book, it just felt like going through the motions, like he was writing a paper or something.
It actually, I think that's one of the distinctions that comes through for me, and maybe it's because we've read some of those texts recently, but this feels like someone who is profoundly not depressed trying to write about a depressed person. Like
That could be it too.
Houellebecq's rich, he's famous, he's got the hot Asian GF,
Right.
and he's got basically nothing to worry about, and he's still trying to get it up to write about these depression and sort of meaninglessness and whatever. I don't think he actually feels it. And when you read Cavan, or when you read Guibert, they feel it. And this, it feels kind of phoned in. And obviously, like, I'm not like saying we should idolize people who are depressed and can accurately represent that depression in text. That's not the point. But it does kind of feel like a misrepresentation. It feels sort of like a phoned in version of like, here's what I think someone who was depressed would say. And so it rings hollow in that way.
Well,
it reminds me of the song Art is Hard by Cursive. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, dude.
Like someone who just like maybe like it reminds me of a band that writes only sad songs, and then they make it big, and they're suddenly like financially stable, and they have all these opportunities, and they have a big house, and they still are trying to write albums about like being a depressed 23-year-old or something. I think you might be right, Gabe. He's maybe not depressed anymore. He's fine. He's got his money and his women, but he's trying to like get back into that mindset.
Which is why he writes about money and women being the way out of depression in the book, because that's what happened to him.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if he really believes that that's the case, though, even in this one. Like, I think Francoise is experiencing a false hope even with that. I would just describe him as a little more pessimistic than you would describe him. Not that that's like
I'm
better or worse.
I'm not saying he's not pessimistic. I think he might be pessimistic, but I'm saying it doesn't. For me, again, it just doesn't ring true as someone who actually has that experience. It rings as someone who, like, from a third party perspective, again, going back to some of these kind of anachronistic at this point in 2021 references, like, I can run through the thought process. What would a depressed person do? They would type in youporn.com and yes, I've captured it. I've captured depression. And it's stupid. That's not it. It's a byproduct. Yeah, sex.com, dude. www.xxx.com. That's how it comes off. That is how it comes off, honestly.
It's tits.com/boobs.
Yeah, tits.com/vagina. Boobies.
I think, yeah.
And it's inauthentic. It comes off as deeply inauthentic to me.
And when you read stuff, I don't know, it is fucked up to describe, but like when you read stuff by people who are genuinely in the throes of despair, like Guibert, the difference is that it's not suffocating. Like what you feel in this book, and I read Serotonin too, and I, like just like what you feel with those is, yeah, I don't know, somebody settling into a blinkered way of experiencing the world by rote and habit and an attempt to play the hits in a sense, you know, in the name of quote unquote truth. And then when you read the real deal, as far as I'm concerned, stuff like Dirty Snow, I don't know, there's this by the bleakness, there is this sense of there's just this like huge alternative, this like massive sense of potential, or like, yeah, I'm really grasping at straws, but just like,
No, I don't.
you're not suffocated. What you are is like deeply saddened and depressed yourself, but like because of how large the world could be, or
Yes.
like that. It's not hope per se, but it's like just the potentiality of the world we live in.
And I think that that's fucking, again, like we've mentioned it a couple times now. I will go to bat for Simonon, who's my favorite writer, and I think that he gets it at a much deeper level. Like when you that feeling of suffocation that you're talking about, Matt. Like I think Simonon rides that fucking line so like in such a fine way, right? Like Dirty Snow. One of the things I loved about Dirty Snow was that it takes place in like what feels like a 5 or 6 block radius. It's a tenement building and a bar, and like there's like a little downtown area, and that's about it. But it's in the context of a much larger world, right? There's the war going. It's a World War II novel, basically.
Right.
And it's captures that sense of just fucking nothingness, meaningless darkness way better than this does. And again, even imaginatively, Houellebecq's like, haha, oh yeah, this is going to be really provocative. Someone jerks off.
Someone fucks a 22-year-old and is like, I don't even like it.
Yeah, exactly. And then Simonon is like, oh yeah, I watched my mom bring a underage prostitute into the bedroom through the window and fuck my friend and pretend that it was me. It's just like so much. It's like Houellebecq's imagination is so small. It's so conservative.
And that was like written 60 years ago.
Exactly. Way before this book. So if you're trying to capture that, it just fails for me.
Well, also, one thing I love about Dirty Snow is that it makes a political statement without diving into the larger picture. And Houellebecq is just trying so hard to, like, you know, criticize society, which he does poorly anyway. But he
Return to Monk, hard K.
Return to Monk.
That's why I thought The Possibility of an Island, although that Updike essay is about that book, and Updike is not having it. It's like, this book fucking sucks.
Yeah, that essay was really funny.
I did think it was on point.
Yeah.
But I do think that book is also a kind of, again, I haven't read his first novel or whatever, but like, again, part of my problem, this is why I was describing like the sci-fi thing and why I find it such a disturbing vehicle for these kind of ideas a lot of the time. And how much I'm more willing to like engage with them. Like, I don't think I don't recognize them as such, but like that book just feels way more honest about all the stuff we're describing Houellebecq as like couching in satire or whatever here. It's just like, no, here's a speculative fiction that kind of like encapsulates the raw, and it's just sort of like breathtakingly hermetically sealed and bleak. It's like having your face vacuum sealed like a piece of chicken thigh.
Ooh.
you know,
or for
plastic.
sex, like in a leather bodysuit.
Right, but there's no opening, so you just actually die.
Die. Well, I mean, and again, I actually I would read another Houellebecq book. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I hated this book. We'll talk about, you know, whatever, we can give it our scores, but I will and would read more. And I think the next one that I personally would want to read is The Elementary Particles, because that strikes me as kind of representative of Houellebecq's actual personal worldview, as you were saying earlier, Matt, like this sort of like kind of Humean, like mechanistic, billiard ball, fucking no free will sort of type shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I would go next. I again, I think he's a great writer, good writer. I think he's abysmally wrong about everything he believes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would even say that I don't even think he's a good writer. I literally didn't underline a single passage in this whole book. I didn't find any of the passages to be that provocative.
I thought the last chapter was poignant. I'll say that, where he's sort of, and I think that like him talking about his father in the last paragraph, I thought that was affecting. And maybe we should read some of it, but I also think it was affecting because Houellebecq's mother converted to Islam, and I think that this is a sort of like,
fuck. How did we not say that?
I know. Well, it's not directly kind of, I don't know. It's not directly relevant, but
I mean,
but it is.
Yeah,
picture.
That's fucking so huge. Yeah, because the elementary particles, there is this device of these two characters who are just ego and id, basically. I wanted to read something I outlined or underlined, just a short thing, which is like what I think applies to him as a writer more than any character. I mean, it's about Francois, but it's it just goes, I felt a dull, numb pain. That's all. But it was enough to keep me from thinking clearly. All I knew was that once again I found myself alone, with even less desire to live and nothing to look forward to but aggravations.
Again, not bad.
No, but I'm not even saying that. I'm saying that to me describes more or less the vibe of the book.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like, I listened to a short clip. I don't know where it was from, of Anna from the Red Scare podcast talking about Houellebecq.
Right. She's a fan.
She's a fan. And I think the specific clip that I heard was her talking about Houellebecq's ability to describe these sort of minor indignities that we're forced to endure under late capitalism. Like, I just want to fucking smoke a cigarette, and I can't do that inside anywhere anymore. And right. Yeah, you know, right, like that's true. And he is deft at sort of both identifying and describing those kinds of moments where you're just like, fuck, man, this fucking sucks. You can't even point to a specific thing, but shit, I'm pissed. But I genuinely think it's a mistake to isolate Houellebecq's ability to do that, which he does have, from a wider context. And there is one, and his wider context is bad. It's just bad. Like, his wider view of the world is terrible. He's not mad that you can't smoke inside because it's an indignity that is denied to you under capitalism. Like, for example, my wife and I have started going out to bars under COVID. For shame, I know. We've started, we go out once or twice a week, Fridays, Saturdays, whatever. And I don't feel bad about it anymore, because you know what? They're telling me I have to go to work in person. They're telling me I have to interact physically with other people on a day-to-day basis, as long as it's serving somebody else.
Right.
Fuck that. But Houellebecq doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about the larger context of these indignities. He's just mad because they are indignities. He's just mad because he can't do the thing he wants to do. He's an anti-masker par excellence, right? He's not mad that he has to wear a mask because it's unreasonable in the context of capitalism, where he has to go to work and be exposed at Wendy's or whatever the fuck. He's mad because he doesn't want to. And that's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's sort of like this very blunt masculine attitude towards indignities that he feels. Just like, I want to do this thing and I can't do it, and I'm a man and I can't. Why? I do get that sense of just like
right,
a shortened thought process by him.
Me want do, you say no, me mad.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes out and he's talking about J.K. Huisman. I called him Heisman in the story.
Michael Heisman,
aka Harry Potter.
Harry Potter Heisman.
Joel Heisman
talks about him like smoking a pipe in his bed inside, and he's like, well, I can't do that anymore. Right.
He also another thing that people use or describe him as is like actually a romantic. That's another thing I hear a lot, like somebody who bemoans the loss of, again, traditional, right, love, human relationships and stuff. And again, I think what is missed with those kind of assessments of him is a lament of the past and tradition, and a return, and the desire of a return of that tradition, but understanding that that's not possible, and that's kind of it, and it's impotent. It's like, there's no way to do this again, so even the kind of squishy aspect of Houellebecq is kind of more in line with the stuff you see a lot of with all the people. Like, again, to bring it to like the contemporary political climate or whatever, it's like fucking incels and shit. It's like, like all these people who are like, I just want to find a genuine connection and love with a beautiful wife and like raise a family and stuff. It's like, that's not terrible. It's once again, it's
wait.
Well, okay. It's not terrible to want to like fall in love and like have a loving relationship with somebody.
Right, but
it's just that it's just literally everything.
I want a submissive wife to give me children.
Okay, well, this is what I was trying to say. Was like, you've isolated the least important aspect of the statement and its context, and that's what I feel like the defenders of like this book and like Houellebecq's worldview in general do when they're defending him.
It's the same way fucking Reddit people talk about Asian women. He talks about Muslim women in this book, which is funny because Houellebecq, I think, has an Asian wife, right?
He does, yeah. Yeah.
Is it a beard? It's kind of like a beard, like a hetero beard.
What, you think he's gay? You think Houellebecq is gay?
No, and
that's problematic.
That, like, I don't think he's gay. I'm just saying that like it might be just some sort of. This is speculative, obviously. He might just totally love her. I'm just saying, like, it could just be a statement in some way. Like,
well, that's the whole thing.
I have a Asian wife. I'm not racist.
But that's the thing. That's the whole thing with like gamer Reddit online guy culture, where they're like, return to tradition, and the only people that get that now are Asian women. They get that they're supposed to be submissive. They get that they're supposed, and of course it's all bullshit. It's all a farce. It's all fucking made up. But that's the fucking narrative that they have created for themselves.
Right. The just sort of holdouts of the eroding forces, but it's like the bad holdouts.
Right.
It's like the entrenched ones that are so fundamentally and also that mixed with the completely racist misinformation also
right.
about other cultures. Right.
And that's the thing, is that contemporary right culture has settled on the East broadly, Japan, China, Korea, as being the sort of bulwark the tradition that we need to. Oh, they get it. They understand tradition. They understand the importance of these structures. And I think Houellebecq in this book is just doing that same move with respect to Islam. And it's rightist and terrible in both contexts.
Right. And if you familiarize yourself with specifically the writing of the cultures you're describing, it's not even like you have to dig that deep to find counter examples or arguments against that idea.
Come back next week when we read Ah Chang's post-Maoist novellas.
Yes. King of Limbs by Radiohead.
Do we have any other big points we want to hit before we go to
I mean,
I feel like we could go. I mean, I feel like we could go on about this book forever. I think
I
it's one of those things where it's like, I think I said this in the chat too. When I hate something, I feel like I need to justify it way more than when I like something. And I hated this book. So I feel like I could go on about it for fucking 2 days.
Well, I am glad that I picked this book, and this is the first book you've hated.
Don't get me wrong. I'm glad I read it. Like,
yeah, I
deeply glad.
want to say that I oddly like recommend reading it as like a case study for this particular author's personality, and also like a weird time capsule too. Like it gives you a sense of the political structure at a certain time at a certain place on the earth. I think it's worth reading, even though I hated it too. And oddly enough, I kind of do want to read more by Houellebecq too, just to like get just to hate more. You know, I just want to hate it more. I want to hate talk.
You'll certainly see themes. I don't even want to read the stuff I had highlighted. There's a random thing with Rediger where I just wrote Neil deGrasse Tyson, Rick and Morty, Pickle Rick. I just wrote that for like a description of like the beautiful universe and the billions of galaxies within galaxies and the whole like cosmic perspective, at once indicating God but also indicating meaninglessness in terms of your station. Like, I do think that that's something that's still definitely floating around culturally, that is more corrosive than perspective giving for a lot of people. And then just very vaguely, like, I don't know. I just want to emphasize that I liked the intelligence character. I forget what the name of the like French intelligence agency is, because it also has it changed acronyms a couple times, even in the book.
I did like that character too. He was like described
that
as
guy
being
was
like
funny.
shorter and like unimposing and like totally bald, right? He shaved his head, but he was kind of like a nice guy. And then you start to learn more about him. You're like, whoa. That was the one character I thought had good characterization. Besides, I mean, actually, I don't even think Francoise did either.
Yeah, I liked him because, you know, I think if you're going to do anything political, you got to discuss the intelligence agencies involved in whatever country or countries you're talking about. And I really just loved his, like, he's just kind of impotent though. I mean, I don't know if this is true overall, but like, he was just sort of like, you know, Ben Abbas is elected, and then they're just like, okay, well, you can retire, and we're not really involving this agency anymore. And he just he still loves being like an armchair expert.
Yeah.
Eat way more, but then just eating canapes and like drinking Malraux wine and stuff. And his wife is just like cooking food, and he's just like, yeah, I know a thing or two about about politics. And he's just like eating roast. Yeah.
There was a lot of drinking in this book.
That's another common factor, I would say.
Yeah.
The characters drinks wine, so much wine. Like, I'd be throwing up constantly if I were eating and drinking as much as these fucking people did in these books.
Yeah, so much wine.
They're just like, I polished off my second bottle of wine. I'm like, how are you not barfing, motherfucker? They're like, I had I had stuffed pheasant and drank my third bottle of claret. And I'm just like, You should be so sick.
I just washed it down with an Ortolan.
My mouth was bleeding because of all the Ortolan bones scratching my palate. The wine and a heady aroma of
Yeah.
But that's all part of the more like, once again, all the food stuff, which is actually quite a big component.
Well, if you like
that kind of
food
happened in the
stuff,
factory.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, if you really like food stuff, you should read more Murakami. I love when he writes about food.
So much cooking.
I love it.
Killing Commendatore. I'm about halfway through.
Right.
It's so calming. It's like reading Lord of the Rings when they're camping. That's
it should be. Yeah. If I wanted to eat latmus bread more than anything else in the world,
yeah,
should be called cooking Commendatore for all.
God damn it.
Otter?
Ooh, I just got prompted by Zoom asking if I was playing music. I'm not. I was singing.
Whoa,
my voice.
I
know my voice is amazing, but shit.
Your tones were so pure that they thought it was instruments. This is how we know AI is still fucking a drooling moron.
Okay, whoa. Chill. Excuse me. I am classically trained, bitch.
Are you? Yeah, Juilliard.
No, unnamed hometown elite choir.
Oh, true, right. Your vocal cords were shaped
with Mr.
Unnamed Man.
Man.
Missing fingers.
F in the chat. Cut his hand off in a snowblower. That's true. That's a true story.
As a pianist.
My choir teacher, the pianist, cut his fucking fingers off in a snowblower.
Wow.
Oh, the only other
suicide club shit.
Yeah. Because dead. I don't know what this leave would even lead to, but the last I promise the last thing is just like that I think is actually a valid argument is just Francois is described as having no historical context outside of his specialty.
Right. Which is sort of true of academia. I know people like that for sure.
I think that's I just think that's an okay criticism as a criticism of people who are, whatever, the cliche, the past is doomed to repeat itself if you don't know it. Like,
right.
People who don't see things happening for what they are, which is like repeats oftentimes of the past, it's like just.
You think that Francois should read more books, probably. Get that coffee.
Well, the official oh my God. Don't fucking. The official stance of this show, I hope, is read more books.
That's true.
Yeah.
And also that every book is a sequel to the previous, which again is a beautiful way to encapsulate the fact that you should be sort of creating a network through what you engage with.
Facts.
And that provides a context.
Tune in for our next booktuber roast where we elaborate on that point.
Oh, baby, I can't wait. Yeah. Okay, so Harry Potter houses.
Okay, I don't know who we do other than Francois. I'm not gonna lie.
It's got to be just Francois. It's just Francois.
So. I guess I go last because I'm the picker.
Well, that's only for scores. I don't know, or whatever. I don't know, man. The dude seems like a Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't think it's
actually. I don't know. I think it's unfair. I was thinking Hufflepuff, but I think it's a little unfair to just lump any follower of any kind. If you're just like a follower type person that needs like a system, which is kind of what Francois is, does that automatically make you a Hufflepuff?
Is he Slytherin because he doesn't care about anybody but himself?
I think he's Slytherin. Yeah, he cares about status and he cares about money.
Would it be?
Himself.
Here's a question: would it be Cucklepuff or Hufflecuck?
Hufflepuff. It's funnier. Yeah. It's funnier, and that's what he is.
So I think
he's a Slithercuck. That's my stance. I'm sticking with Slytherin. I don't know. I think
I think I get
I think
it.
Hufflepuff is a little more. I find them to be more jovial.
Yeah, he's very dour.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that's the misconception. I think like,
Hufflepuffs can be dour.
okay, yes, exactly. I think the difference is he's not someone like Rediger. I think you still have to cleave to the broad stereotypes of the houses occasionally, and it's like
Right.
he's so happy. He has no plans.
Rediger is.
No, Rediger is beyond. He's Slytherin, and he's
right. Okay.
and he's beyond it. He's just found his angle and whatever, and he's ambitious, and he's like a Svengali. Like he's basically the product evangelist for Islam
Right.
to academics, and he knows how to pitch it to each individual. And then the individuals are like the Hufflepuff people, like Francois, who's like, so like the polygamy thing, like I don't have to be alone when I drink.
right.
And like, yeah, it's just he's so pathetic that like, I don't know. That might be unfair.
Rediger is like the Billy Mays of Islam for academics.
He's just the slap it on guy is. Stops a leak. It's like the leak of your soul out of your body. He's like, nah, just slap it on there, and you know, you'll get an extra 30 years.
So your stance is Hufflepuff?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I agree. I get where you're coming from, Paul, but I think I'm still Hufflepuff.
I think Slytherins can have a little bit of Hufflepuff in them.
That can be true too, right?
Yeah.
I'm sticking with Slytherin.
I'm with it.
All right.
Score time. Okay. Paul's got to go last. It's his pick per tradition.
Mm-hmm.
I can go first. Or Matt, do you want to?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I'm giving it a. I'm rounding up. I'm giving it a 2 even.
Nice. Wait, are you rounding up or are you giving it a 2 even?
I've rounded up from like a 1.87.
When have we ever like?
I'm doing a 2 even.
Okay.
All right.
This is a weird one for me because, like we've talked about, I think I recommend reading it, and I personally will read more of his books. But I thought it was absolute poop. I thought it was super bad. It's like a 1.13 for me.
Sick. Oh, I love.
So I again read it, and I personally will read other things he's written. I thought this was garbage, but still read it. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah. I'm pretty much in the middle of I'm going to do a 1.5, and I also recommend reading it though.
Maybe I will do 1.87 then.
Bet.
Yeah.
Okay.
1.87.
Nice.
Noted.
Okay.
Yeah. Fuck this book, but also read it. It's
Yeah.
It is a weird one.
But I think it might be good for people that like don't know what they're like, if they feel lost or something, and maybe someone would read this and like it, like a lot of people have, and maybe find like weird
Get that coffee
meaning in it. But if you do, you something's wrong with you.
When you're standing on a cliff and you're looking down at the abyss.
Maybe you're snacking on a Cliff Bar after your hike
for no reason. Yeah, I mean that's the problem, is that he's a persuasive enough writer to appeal to that. That's the harm, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That's the downside to it.
Yep.
Yeah, watch that debate and then read this book, the Keegan Craig debate.
Yeah.
It's a good back-to-back thing to do, I would say. Good test for you, I think.
I don't need, like, the thing I will say is that I feel like Houellebecq's on the wane in terms of his notoriety. I genuinely agree that I don't think he has been kind of writing in the same territory, and he's circling the drain of a couple concepts over the course of his writing career. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe he'll surprise the world with something that again happens unfortunately close to some other tragedy or something. But like, I mean, yeah, for the most part, it would be worthwhile to read some other stuff, but I would say it would probably just confirm what you guys are already kind of sensing.
So I think it would be really funny if Houellebecq's next book was about how a famous bunny from a 90s cartoon movie was not sexy anymore. And that because of Lola Bunny?
Lola Bunny?
The remake from fucking okay, never mind. I'm explaining the joke.
Did they nerf her breasts? What happened?
Yeah, she's not sexy anymore, dude. Lola Bunny from Space Jam isn't sexy anymore.
No.
Yeah. Lola Bunny is an uggo now for LeBron James.
Well,
or it would be funny if it was about a root vegetable that was no longer a specific gender.
Ah, yes. Not that they were anyway.
I know, right? Yeah, that's the thing.
I
love the idea.
A book about emojis by Michel Houellebecq.
Oh my god. So, okay, Michel Houellebecq actually wrote the fucking emoji movie.
Adam Sandler would be the perfect protagonist for a Houellebecq adaptation. He really would be.
He would be, dude.
You're right. Yeah.
You're not wrong, dude. Fucking Uncut Gems was really good.
Right.
I think he actually might have too much depth as an actor. I would probably put some. I'm serious. He's good.
No, I know.
Who would be a better choice? Someone like who's
Pauly Shore
girl?
Or who would play Francois? Fucking
Pauly Shore.
Pauly Shore.
I was
Brendan Fraser.
That's
Brendan Fraser, dude. No, that's
Matt Damon. And who's the other guy?
Ben Affleck?
I think Ben Affleck would be good.
Oh, Ben Affleck could be, because Ben Affleck is also, there's that meme of Ben Affleck just kind of like looking a little schlubby, smoking a cigarette on the balcony.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
That would vibe. That would be a vibe.
And he can't get his dick hard for Lola Bunny, and he's like, well, sort of thinking about killing myself.
And his best friend is just gender neutral Mr. Potato Head.
He was like, you can plug and chug with me.
Oh my god. All right, well Beck, any
well done.
well
in terms of our show tonight.
Yeah, and I think we'll be back next week.
Anyone who has listened to this point is a legend, and you got the best joke of the whole show.
That's right.
That was it. If you listen, then you get the best jokes.
Always at the end. Sorry about that.
Go to our Patreon. There's fun shit on there, everybody. If you're still here, you might be the kind of person who would subscribe to the Patreon.
If you're listening right now, you might be a redneck.
Oh god. Happy 20th episode, guys.
Yes. Momentous. I love it.
Here's to 20,000 more.
That's that's it.
Right. We need scientific notation to even describe how many episodes we're going to be having.
All right, bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks
Love
again.
you.
And we love you.